What's up, sister? I know. It's blonde. I bleached it, and it kind of looks so good I just left it there. I mean, I got this, but like I said, when I bleached it, it just kind of went. I don't normally look good as a blonde, and this kind of looks good. 𝐖𝐡𝐢𝐭𝐞, how are you? Yeah, Nathan, this was my mistake and haircut. Nancy, is Adaline going to be here, or is she the UK? I noticed her writing was UK-ish. Thank you, Nathan. This doesn't really show it as good as it. I'll have to give you a better picture. Y'all, Daddy's home. My daddy's home. He came home Monday. And he's doing great. Honey, I started reading this book about 30 minutes ago. It is good. Oh. Yeah, when I saw that first comment on their vomit sunglasses and squids, I thought, well, this ain't one I got to worry about being scared of. Your authors scare me some. Yours and Jackie's got some that's like, you got some scary authors. So I get nervous when I got you two on here, because I don't ever know what to expect. Well, I put this music on. Well, honestly, I don't know what's going to be on here. It's a mix that YouTube did up for me, and it looks like it might be country, but who knows? But okay, I can do that. This sounds like it's right up my alley, though. You know me. I think I've read her stuff before. Her name is so familiar. Pretty sure I've read her stuff. But looks good. And I can't sing this song worth a flip. I just do. It's like karaoke. Oh, right up my alley. I love elemental witches. Is it like the most realistic or something? I don't know. They like, I can almost believe they're real. And who the hell knows? Maybe all this crap's real and we just dumb old humans that don't know jack shit about anything. Did you tell me whether or not she was going to be on here? Oh, I love the sarcasm. I'm all about sarcasm. I got sarcasm for days. Okay, I was thinking she was, because I noticed as I was reading there was some UK spellings and wordage. Excuse me here. Just pull these girls up here where they belong. Look, I got a butt crack. See my butt crack? This one's prettier than that one. Yeah. I kind of thought Miranda Lambert might fit pretty good. Earlier in the morning. I don't shake very good. I don't have any kind of grace. Stuck with you. Sheesh. All right. Let's go ahead and get this party started. Because I could just sit here and yak all day long. Alright, here we go. Y'all ready, Freddies? They ain't that big. They won't smack me. They're bigger up here than they are down here. This is it. They're not big. That's it right there. That's all I got. Alright, chapter 1. Vomit, sunglasses, and squids. A lone water droplet slid down the plastic glass containing the scarlet slush masquerading as a Bloody Mary. I bet it the $3.20 in my purse that the 15th and final guy to grace the chair opposite me would be on the nerdy side. They were nerdy and shy, or so far up their own ass they couldn't see daylight. I tapped the blunt pencil against the cheap clipboard to the rhythm of Miley Cyrus's entering the room on a wrecking ball and glanced at the 14 no's, accompanied by emojis. The first guy spoke in one-syllable words and had a vague green tint to his pallor. I doodled the sick face with matching vomit. Number 6 sat like he was making space for the balls of Satan between his legs. He also wore sunglasses in a gloomy room at 10 p.m. He got the sunglasses emoji. The 10th guy had won the squid emoji. His legs were under the table, playing a clumsy and unattractive game of footsie, whilst his hands behaved like spaghetti. That was the longest 4 minutes of my life. No, I don't need to know that crap. My Microsoft Defender is doing its job. Yeah, I have no threats. I sighed and ran through, the longest 4 minutes of my life. I would kill Sebastian. No car was worth this painful evening. I sighed and ran through my to-do list. At home, the pantry door needed straightening, and the porch swing was crying out for a coat of paint and some WD-40. So it ceased its insistent whining. That is what I should be doing, not speed dating in the local dive known as the Pit. It wasn't actually called the Pit, but it's what the residents of White Castle called it. Its official name was something flower related, the orchid perhaps, or bluebell. But if you said you were going to the Pit, everyone knew you meant the dive bar opposite the town convenience store specializing in cheap liquor and knockoff perfumes. It boasted terminally sticky floors, served stale beer, and a vague, sickly sweet odor clung to the air. The neon street lamps fought a losing battle against the grimy windows, leaving the room sheathed in shadows. It was the kind of place you showered off with a harsh loofah when you got home. Metal screeched along the cheap laminate floor, which doubled as a dance floor on weekends. The sound set my teeth on edge. The chair continued its protest in a chorus of squeaky plastic as number 15 took his place opposite me. I squinted at the clipboard and gave myself another 3 seconds before I won the bet with the cocktail. 3, 2, he cleared his throat. I glanced up. irritated at being called out early. My breath caught as I took in a massive man sporting a 5 o'clock shadow. He was the epitome of masculine, and everything female inside me stood to attention. His muscles bulged under his crisp white Henley as he folded his arms and stared at me. His deep-set hazel eyes. Hang on just a second, y'all. Hey, baby girl. I had ibuprofen. Okay. Okay. I know. I'm sorry. Yeah, ibuprofen's all I have. Okay, doke. All right. See you when you get here. Love you. Bye. Shelby's on her way here. She was wanting to know what I had in pain meds. Nothing good. Where was I at? He was the epitome of masculine, and everything female inside me stood to attention. His muscles bulged under his crisp white Henley as he folded his arms and stared at me. His deep-set hazel eyes studied my face. I blinked, glared at the cocktail, and prepared to lose my $3.20.
Are you going to start? Are you going to start or continue to impress me with your one-man pencil band? He rumbled.
My pencil paused, and my gaze snapped to his. A puddle of magic splashed into the surrounding air, the sensation like sizzling rain on my bare skin. Recognizing danger, mine flared in response. I fought it for control. No need to challenge him in a dive bar. How cliche. He narrowed his eyes. I stared at the stupid questions on the clipboard and swallowed. Showing weakness to shifters was like dangling a raw, juicy steak in their face and daring them not to shred it. I would not be prey. What's your favorite food? I asked.
Meat?
He growled. I smothered a laugh. Of course it was meat. Served raw and bloody would be my guess. What hobbies do you have?
Hunting?
If he's from Louisiana, it's
Hunting?
oh, I bet just not with guns. That's What were you known for in school? I squinted at the clipboard. Who the hell thought of these questions? And why was I only now just paying attention?
Getting what I want.
Right, and something told me that was still the case. What's your favorite color? He gazed into my eyes a beat too long before scanning down my dress. Stupid low-cut neckline. I would kill Sebastian.
I'm swayed between green, copper, and black right now.
He grinned, showing me a set of pearly whites and canines, a smidge too sharp to be human. I was being treated to his charming side. I'm sure females usually rolled over and showed their bellies when he smiled at them. I'm sure I would. He leaned forward and caught a curl cascading over my shoulder, pulling it straight. Goosebumps erupted down my arms.
Is that your natural color? Hair color?
Yep, boobs are real too, I said without missing a beat. The idiot glanced at my cleavage. It was a fair question. The deep copper tone looked enhanced, but he should be able to sniff out that no chemicals were used to achieve it. What's your favorite TV show? He released my curl, letting it spring back.
The Nature Channel.
That's an entire channel, not a show. His lips twitched.
Finally, she sways from the questionnaire.
He drawled, placing a giant hand on the clipboard. He pushed it to the table and leaned forward. He could shovel graves with those babies, or lift a woman and wrap her around him like a burrito. A hug. He scanned the 14 no's I'd checked, and a wicked grin split his face.
Nobody caught your eye?
He pointed at the squid.
Not even Squid Boy?
I fought not to squirm. No. He tapped the number 15.
Still?
Arrogant asshole. At least he still fell into one category. Maybe I'll just give the cocktail half the money. No. He sat back and ran a hand through his dark hair, the tips lighter from the sun, his brow furrowed as he regarded me. That's right. I'm not falling for your uncharming ass. Hotness would only get you so far. A golden gleam rolled over his hazel eyes. So fast if I'd blinked, I'd have missed it. But whilst he was assessing me, that move allowed me to peg him.
Which?
He finally said. If we are going for insults. Kitten. He threw his head back and laughed. The deep, booming sound caught the attention of the patrons of the pit, and a stupefied silence coated the room. Figuring they had heard the practical roar from this male incorrectly, the humans shook themselves and restarted their conversations. It was human nature to rationalize the unnatural, to ignore the impossible, and they were adept at it. We stared at each other, examining and weighing up strength, intelligence, and ability. He was excellent at hiding his alpha status. If not for the unintentional magic splurge, I wouldn't have known he was anything but human. A burly, overgrown human with sharp teeth, but still just human. I managed my magic in a similar way. He would assess me as significant, but not a threat. Is that tree wearing them Wranglers we saw a while ago? Never let them see you coming. That was my grandmother's advice. And when you finally showed your cards, be the biggest, baddest person in the room. Own your power, and everyone else will follow you. Staring at the guy opposite me, I was sure this master plan would fail. Alphas liked challenges. Whilst I didn't want to be prey, I also didn't want to be a challenge. Indifference was my aim. The buzzer sounded, signaling the end of this torture. I shot out of my seat and grabbed my borrowed pink Gucci handbag. Nice to meet you, I said in a weird goodbye. He swiveled in his chair and watched me walk towards the exit.
The pleasure was all mine.
I sucked in a breath. That's it. He rumbled. I shot a glare at him over my shoulder, expecting his eyes to be lasered to my ass. His stare collided with mine. I sucked in a breath and thrust my clipboard at Karen, the owner and organizer of the pit's answer to speed dating. "No one you like?" she asked, scanning the sheet and glancing back at Mr. Big and Burley. I shook my head, slid one last glance at him, and hurried towards the exit as he stalked my every move. I flew out of the building into the sticky late summer Louisiana evening and found Sebastian waiting in the silver Bugatti. I flopped into the driver's seat next to him and sighed.
You made it,
Sebastian said with a throaty chuckle, showing he knew exactly how difficult the last few hours had been. And you just lost your car for another month.
At this point, you've driven her more than me. It's more your car than mine.
I don't want your handouts.
Did you meet anyone?
Sebastian asked, his Nordic blue eyes searching. I met 15 someones. He sighed.
It wasn't meant to be torture, Cora.
You were there to enjoy yourself and maybe meet someone worth your time. I spun the car around in the opposite direction and dropped the gear to speed away from the pit just as the Alpha stepped out into the car lot. Sebastian glanced at him, his lean body coiled and a growl curled up his throat. The Alpha's eyes flashed cat, and a ripple of power skimmed over his flesh. Start to say fresh. For a second, I wondered if he would pounce on the bonnet and challenge Sebastian. That would make for an entertaining end to a dull evening. I subdued an eye roll. Your first lesson, ladies and gentlemen. Vampires and shifters loathed each other. Chapter 2. Eyeballs float. Who knew? Every time I got to pee, my eyeballs start floating. I knew all about that. It was a well-known myth that vampires couldn't walk in the sunlight, a myth which the vampires gladly fueled, because hiding in plain sight, or in this case, plain sunlight, was the best way to dodge suspicion. Indeed, that particular myth was being dispelled as Patrick Lawrence, the head of House Lawrence, sat regally in the antique armchair in my spacious office at 2 p.m. on a bright and sunny day. Facing Patrick was the gracefully graying matriarch of the Wafer family, Louise Wafer, who wore a scowl that suggested her wolf was close to the surface. Barry Wafer stood at her back with his trembling hands resting on her shoulders, offering his mate support as the two enemies eyed me as if I held the answer to all their problems. You're the Undertaker? Louise asked, gazing at my slight frame. I resisted the eye roll that sat fluttering on my eyelids as the nickname I'd earned, through no fault of my own, came back to bite me in the ass. At 5 foot and a bit to spare, with copper hair and green eyes. Look, Nina, somebody you're taller than. With copper hair and green eyes, I looked more like a flame-haired Tinkerbell than a famous wrestler. I leaned back in my chair to put distance between myself and an innocuous, heavy, thick, black bag stretched out on my desk like a sacrificial offer. I am. What can I do for you? I asked both Patrick and Louise. Louise fluttered her hand towards the bag and held her nose in the air. We want you to separate them, she stated, still eyeing me as if expecting a more bulky, less dainty version of the Undertaker, would tear free of my body. I raised an eyebrow, wondering if someone had screwed my reputation up from doctor to psychologist. Who? I asked. Patrick leaned forward, grasped the metal zipper of the bag, and pulled hard. The links parted, revealing a grotesque pile of remains that resembles something you would put in a stew, not a body bag. All eyes zeroed in on the bag. It was like watching a car crash that's already happened, and you're left staring at the aftermath. Our sons, Patrick offered, sitting back with a frown and folding one smart trouser-clad leg over the other. I leaned forward to examine the contents more closely. I don't know why. It's not like I could discern any parts. Oh, wait. That's definitely an eyeball. They are both in here? I clarified, pointing to the bag. Yes. They had a disagreement and sorted it using explosives. Louise stated as Barry drew in a shaky breath. I see. And you want me to separate their remains? I checked. They nodded as if this was an ordinary Monday morning occurrence. Rubbing my temple, I contemplated how I ended up here. Not here in this room. Here as in figuring out how to separate out vampire and shifter mesh. Wow. 4 years of medical school for this. How the mighty have fallen. considered my options. No one could ever accuse me of not being a problem solver. I can't separate them, but I can give you half of their remains, which will only contain your son, your own son. Patrick and Louise eyeballed each other, and for a terrifying moment, I thought they would add to the mush.
This is agreeable.
Patrick said as if there was any other option. I stood and swiped my hands down my jean shorts. Excellent. When should we return? Louise asked, patting Barry's hand as he stifled a sob. No need. It will only take a few minutes. I stated, zipping the bag up, careful not to touch any mush. I glanced at Patrick and Barry. Could one of you help me to the clinic?
Of course,
Patrick said. He stood, flipped his suit jacket onto the back of the armchair, and rolled his crisp shirt sleeves to his elbow. He cradled the bag and looked at me. I gestured with my hand for him to follow. The steel reinforced door in the corner of my office gave way to my lap, which guests rarely saw. I snapped on the bright fluorescent lights, and at my direction, Patrick deposited the bag onto the stainless steel examination table. Dragging on a pair of medical gloves, I dug around the bottom cover under the sink to find the silver-plated bowl needed for the task. Next, I grabbed a plate carved from wood and placed them both on the metal trolley. As I rolled it towards the table, I scooped up a plastic jug. Patrick eyeballed the wooden plate and took a step back.
Is that pink ivory?
He asked, not to be confused with ivory from animals. Pink ivory was a rare tree found in South Africa. It was a pretty blush pink color, made the most gorgeous furniture, and was lethal to vampires. It was rumored that an ancient tribe blessed the wood to protect them from the 𝘊𝘰𝘮𝑒𝑟𝑒𝑚. I may have just totally ruined that, so my apologies. Their version of vampires. I nodded. Sure is. Snatching two large clear plastic bags from the drawer, I snapped one open and dropped it inside the scales dangling from the ceiling. Are you staying? I asked Patrick. He nodded, his expression one of morbid fascination. It's a look I'm familiar with, adding together the estimated weight of an adult shifter and an adult vampire. I scooped up the mush, using the jug from the table into the scales. Satisfied I had approximately half, I removed the bag, replaced it with the empty one, and repeated the process. The final few grams I separated equally, then I tipped the contents of one bag into the metal bowl. The remains hissed and protested as vapors poured from the bowl. Years of obnoxious smells have made me immune to their vulgarity, but judging by the pastiness of Patrick's face, it wasn't pleasant. Just as I was about to tip the other bag onto the wooden plate, Patrick reached out and touched my arm.
Wait, the eye is most definitely my son's.
He pointed to a blue eyeball swimming at the top of the bag. I'm slightly fascinated by the way it's casually bobbing on top of the mush. Should eyeballs do that, or should they sink? This is why I have no friends. I fished it out and plunked it into the metal bowl. Nothing happened. Cora Roberts, rescuer of eyeballs. I repeated the process with the wooden plate until I was left with two steaming bowls of uncontaminated supernaturals, one vampire, the other shifter. I glanced around my clinic and realized I had nothing large enough or leak-proof to deliver the remains back to the respective families. They couldn't have the bowl or plate. The bowl was expensive and the plate was rare and in demand, given that it was made from the only substance known to kill vampires. Well, other than explosions, apparently. I believe decapitation was also an issue. I grabbed my phone from my shorts pocket and zipped off a text. Patrick shoved his hands in his pockets and glanced around the makeshift cold and clinical lab I'd set up. It had started off as a basic doctor's examination room. Over the years, I'd added to it with a body-sized refrigerator and an X-ray machine. We don't wait long until Maggie bounds through the door, arms full of Tupperware containers. I wasn't sure which ones. She rushed out as her collection clattered to the side. She crept closer to the table, her nose wrinkled in disgust. Ew. I'm teaching her tact, though not very well, it seems. Thank you, Maggie, I stated, staring at her. She got the hint and skipped out of the room. Picking two equal-sized tubs, I tipped the contents of the shifter into one and the vampire into the other. The eyeball swirled around on the top before winking below the mush in a macrame goodbye. I doubt my aunt had this in mind when she bought out the Tupperware party years ago. Securing the lids, I handed Patrick his remains.
That was economical.
My gloves hit the yellow ball waistband with a slap as I usher him back towards my office and the other tub in my arms. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence, I think. Louise stood and smoothed her hands down her modest charcoal pencil skirt. Barry stepped forward with his arms stretched out. I guided the tub into his arms. Excuse me, y'all. You can pay Maggie upstairs when you leave, I explained, ushering them out. That was an easy but weird job. A scattering of paperwork and bills had my attention when a loud bang snapped through the air, causing me to drop my pen. What now? I jogged up the stairs to find my longest-staying resident staring out the west-facing window, shamelessly curtain twitching. What is it? Rebecca turned to me with a perfectly plucked arched brow. Our neighbors seem to be having domestic problems. I groaned and stalked out through the front door and onto the porch to investigate. Paul and Janet Robinson had been renting the converted stables on my land for the last 3 months. They were quiet and paid on time, the perfect tenants. Rebecca joined me on the porch and leaned over the banister with a disinterested expression. You cheating, ungrateful, lazy mutt! Janet shouted as a bulging brown leather suitcase went flying from her hands into the back of a banged-up pickup truck. She swung around to face a wide-eyed Paul who held his hands up in surrender. She caught sight of us gawking. Her gaze narrowed on Rebecca, and she reached into the pickup and swung a shotgun in our direction. What did you do? I muttered. Rebecca shrugged and flipped her ice-blonde hair over her shoulders. The boy was starving for affection. And you gladly gave it to him? He gave back, she said with a wink. I remember specifically having a discussion with you about not seducing my guest. But they're not your guest. They're tenants. I rubbed my left temple, staving off the migraine that had been threatening to appear since the black bag opened on my desk. A shot sounded a split second before a scattering of chalky dust burst from the white wall behind me. Great, something else that needed fixing. She's a poor shot, Rebecca noted with detached nonchalance, which for her was easy to pull off given the bullets wouldn't kill her. Me, however, you man-robbing blood-sucking whore. Janet screeched, hitting tones which would cause dogs to howl. I winced. Rebecca sighed. The insults are so obvious these days. Nobody puts any effort into intellectual threats and witty comebacks. You're a lost cause. I deadpanned. Maybe I should attend a help group. I snorted. The last thing you need is to be placed in a group of sex addicts. It would be like taking a bottle of whiskey to an AA meeting. Janet's slurs became crasser and would burn the ears of a sailor. Paul, the coward, jumped into the truck and started the engine. Rebecca wrinkled her nose. You smell like charred meat. Rebecca, everybody, the only vegetarian vampire in existence. That's what happens when you're gifted with the guts of a vampire and a shifter, then asked to separate out their individual tissues for appropriate burial. Rebecca's brow furrowed. How did you manage that? Half the remains, put one batch on a silver plate and the other one on a pink ivory plate. You own a pink ivory plate? Should I be afraid? Depends whether you listen to me and stop seducing the guests. Rebecca chuckled. Janet strode closer. Put the gun down, Janet, I said. She swung the gun to the right, more in my direction. And you stuck up witch bitch putting up with the vampire slut. Her arm tensed and shoulder straightened. That's quite enough. I called on my element, the sensation like breathing the cleanest air you could imagine. My magic sought the closest source of water, the Mississippi River, running along the rear gardens. The sheet of water came riding around the corner and halted in front of the house. I rotated my right arm and bent the liquid to my will. It whipped around, creating a translucent shield and forcing Janet to step back. The whole thing took less than 2 seconds. A shot fired, the bullet lodging in the water. Reaching forward, the water formed a hand stretching back to me, allowing me to pluck out the still warm bullet. Hand, I said to Rebecca. She gave me her palm with a tiny scowl on her delicate features. I dropped the bullet in her palm. A souvenir of your time with Paul, and a reminder not to sleep with other women's males. Paul revved the engine, then honked the horn. Janet threw the gun on the lawn with a growl, stomped to the truck, and dragged Paul out by the scruff of his neck. He landed on the lawn with a yelp. Janet jumped in, floored the pedal to the metal, and peeled out of the driveway and onto the road, the main road, without pausing. Luckily for Janet, White Castle was a small town with less than 2,000 residents, so despite it being a main road, traffic was always light. Caught in the sitcom that is Paul and Janet, Rebecca and I turned to watch Paul pick himself up with slumped shoulders and drag his feet inside the house. He glanced over his shoulder with a puppy dog look at Rebecca. I sent the waters towards the citrus trees and released it. The summer was proven to be a cruel one, even by Southern standards. You might have a shifter stalker in the making. He knew the score. I'm like the opposite of that saying they use at Christmas. My fingers drummed on the banister as my brain scrambled for what saying she was referencing. Peace to you and your family? She shook her head. I'm just for Christmas, not for life. I chuckled under my breath and turned, sidestepped the porch swing, and re-entered the house. Wow. Just wow. She followed on my heels. Speaking of men, how did your speed dating at the pit go? Sebastian's Bugatti is mine for another month. She chuckled. I knew you'd get through it. You love that car. What I meant was, did you meet anyone? My mind flashed to the enigmatic shifter. They were either too quiet and shy, the type I would eat for breakfast, or arrogant and cocky, the type I would most likely kill on a first date. Rebecca hugged. Your standards are too high. At least I have standards, I muttered. You have a back off or get bitten vibe that most men would run screaming from. I spun and grinned. And if they stick around after that vibe, they might be worth investigating. Out of 15 guys, not one of them caught your interest. I frowned. There was an alpha. A wicked smirk pulled at her lips. Oh, really? But he was too self-assured, arrogant, cocky even. I can't date someone who thinks they are prettier than me. So, he was well groomed. That's his crime? No, he called me a witch. Rebecca sucked in a breath. Elementals are born with links to the elements, a direct line to the magic shrouding the earth. Witches are humans who dabble in magic. Mostly, they make useless potions and pray to a non-existent deity. It was an insult. What did you do? He asked. She asked. I shrugged. Called him a kitten. Our joint laughter echoed around the house. Chapter 3. What did I nail? I'd like to nail something. I nail the alpha. Chapter 3. Secrets are like onions. Summer Grove House was a whitewashed plantation house erected in the Pelican state of Louisiana by my ancestors in 1793. Following costly damage courtesy of Hurricane Gustav, we were forced to diversify our business. Even the general upkeep of the 4-story building was more than the bed and breakfast was making on its own. The basement now housed my office, unofficial lab, and clinic, suited specifically for the supernaturally inclined. We specialized in loners, supernaturals not affiliated with a vampire house or a shifter pack. The ground floor was the communal living area and kitchen. The first floor contained guest bedrooms, and the converted attic housed my private quarters. Supernaturals fell into 3 distinct species: vampires, shifters, and elementals. Elementals were the most integrated into human society, yet considered the furthest from them. A government ruled them the High Order of Elementals, or 𝑘, commonly known as the Order. Unlike shifters and vampires, you didn't opt in. They ruled you regardless as to your personal views. A little like humans and their presidents and prime ministers. In theory, voting was fair and unbiased. In reality, it was a popularity contest. Of course, like any parliament, the leader drove. She brought food in here. I can smell it. I smell French fries. In reality, it was a popularity contest. Of course, like Parliament, the leader drove the flavor of the views, and for the last 22 uncontested years, he had been a tyrannical bitch with elitist views. Elementals stuck to their family groups, similar to covens, except we didn't do any of the creepy crap human witches seem to have adopted. I wonder if elementals dance naked in the moonlight. Hey, baby girl, you need to go get those little babies on my truck. They're in the back car seat. Okay. I just happened to think of that though. So. All elementals had an affinity: earth, water, fire, and air, and all could learn basic magic skills, locator spells, etc. Approximately 10% of elementals had a secondary gift, and of those 10%, 1% were psychic. Most psychics were precogs, with their visions and intuitions based on events in the future. I was a retro. My gift was focused on the past, specifically death. With these secondary gifts came a price, the universe taking its pound of flesh. For me, when I touched someone to glimpse their last moments, I was forced to relive their soul-crushing fear and terrible pain. Speaking of the dead, I pointed at the familiar Tupperware perched on the rectangular reception desk as my sandals slapped against the wooden floor. Why is that still here? I asked Maggie, who was currently swinging on the chair and filing her nails into sharp points with an intense concentration. Maggie blinked at the plastic tub like it was a surprise. I'd been accused of being a sucker for a sob story, and Maggie was living proof of that. A lone bobcat shifter, on the run from an abusive father and an arranged marriage. She turned up on my doorstep when a local shifter family took pity on the bruised and beat up girl. That was a year ago, and since then Maggie has blossomed into a cute but clueless girl who I let live here rent free in exchange for her work as my receptionist and general help. I tapped the top of the plastic to get her attention. Maggie, why have the Wakefer family left their son on my reception desk? She pulled at one of her dark pigtails and smiled, her chocolate brown eyes lighting up her face. A Native American beauty, in a few years I would need to bat off any unmated male in 100-mile radius. The woman said she doesn't have room to bury her idiot son in the family plot. He didn't even leave her any grandchildren, so she paid the extra for us to take care of him. Right. The Wafers were loners, living outside of pack politics and protection. I dimly recalled they lived on the east side of town in a small two up, two down with a garden you could barely swing a cat in. There's a prepared plot under the magnolia trees on the south side. Would you take care of him? She nodded, grabbed the tub like it contained her lunch and not somebody's son, and trotted out the side door, towards the burial fields. I felt around under the reception desk for the garden plants. I kept a concise map of everybody's whereabouts should some wayward family come seeking the remains of their kin. My pen paused over the plot I'd sent Maggie to. Damn, I didn't know his name. I marked him down as Wafer's son with today's date. I forewent gravestones as I didn't want to advertise that I allowed shifters and vampires to be buried in my garden. That would be hard to explain to local human law enforcement. I thought of what awaited me in my room, and with a resigned sigh, climbed the 3 flights of stairs to the attic. Whilst my elemental magic cost me little, this next part would cost me at least a few hours of sleep, and several hundred calories of which my waistline was eternally grateful. I passed an aging vampire couple strolling down the hall arm in arm. They had been here for 2 nights, Lillian and Stephen Graham. Lillian was a slender woman with deep auburn hair. She wore her blue dress trousers that matched her eyes with a cream blouse. Stephen was clad in corduroy fawn trousers and a green shirt. He wore his dark blonde hair slicked back. I believe they were visiting their newly born grandson. Their daughter had married into a house, but their loner status meant they could visit but not stay. Vampire politics suck. Maybe that should be their motto. Stephen nodded towards me, whilst Lillian gave me a beaming smile. Thank you so much for giving us the room of the west wing, Cora. It has the most beautiful sunsets. She gazed at Stephen like the sun rose and set with him, not the east and west. You're most welcome, Mrs. Graham. I hope you'll consider us next time you have cause to visit White Castle. Satisfied customers meant repeat business, and that's what Summer Grove needed. We were barely holding our heads above water, and at less than 40% occupancy, I had a supernatural bed and breakfast business to grow. The Grahams held on to each other as they gracefully descended the stairs to the ground floor. Meanwhile, I dragged my tired ass to my white double doors and exhaled. As I pushed it open to find the wafer's son sitting on my sofa looking confused as hell. Having a secondary gift was both a blessing and a curse. A blessing because I was graced with extra magic. Cursed because the gift wasn't returnable and you couldn't unplug it when you'd had enough. I tipped my head at him as I opened the refrigerator and grabbed a Gatorade. I needed hydration and calories for what was coming. Cracking the top, I took a long swig and wiped the slight dribble from the back of my hand with half the pastel pink lipstick I'd worn this morning. "What's your name?" I asked the wafer's son. He squinted at me. "Tom Wafer. Wait, can you see me?" I nodded. Oh boy, he figured out nobody could see him. I tried to get them before they could freak out. "Tom, your parents brought you here after you had an accident." He jumped up and rushed towards me. "It was no accident. Mario promised me an honorable fight, and the conniving bloodsucker tried to ram C4 down my throat." He tried to slam his fist against the marble counter and succeeded to freak himself out further when it disappeared inside my canned goods cupboard. He pulled his fist out and blinked at it as if to wish it back corporeal. Oh, Tom, if only it worked like that. In life, Tom had been a lean guy with cropped dark hair and a builder's tan. The crinkles around his eyes suggested laughter was found and shared easily. "He succeeded," I pointed out, wheeling away the belch stuck in my throat from guzzling the Gatorade. Hard ice blue eyes turned on me, reminding me that shifters have an animal side that, no matter what species, one should not mess with. Before he could, I grabbed the bastard by his balls and tried to ram it down his throat. Lovely imagery. Thanks, Tom. I'll sleep better tonight. Let me guess. It exploded before you could get away. He nodded and stared around the open-plan living space. I'd made my apartment light and airy, taking advantage of the many floor-to-ceiling windows. The furnishings were in neutral shades of cream and sky blue. It was somewhere one could easily meditate, if I could find 5 minutes to myself, that was. "Why am I here?" he asked. I hated this part, the one where the soul in question expected to be at their own family plot on their own lands. Nobody explained it to them, and those responsible left before given the bad news. It was a constant reminder that family could be ruthless and cold. Death sometimes brought out the worst in people. Your parents felt it best that you be laid to rest here at Summer Grove House. "The creepy plantation owned by the Undertaker," he scoffed and air quoted my nickname, "that talks to the dead?" I waited a beat to see if he would catch on. He stared back at me. Nope. Clueless as they come. Seems he had nothing between his ears even before the explosion. That would be me. He threw his head back and laughed. I hated that nickname. Even the dead found it hilarious, and they were on the blunt end of my gift. When I find out who started it, I'll make them pay. Wait, if I'm not buried on family grounds, I won't get my rights and join my ancestors. That malicious bitch. I assume he meant his mother and not me. It was cruel to damn their son to an eternity of wandering the earth. But I had a solution that eased my guilt over offering my own gardens as a graveyard for those least wanted. If you follow me, I can explain, I said, stepping around him. I could just walk right through him, but that would be impolite. Also, it gave me the chills. I made my way across the wooden floor, which I'd made a feature throughout the house, and headed towards the faded white door in the center of the far left wall. Secrets were in layers, and the closer you got to the center, the fewer people knew. There were the ones you told acquaintances to break the ice, like your favorite movie being a spoof comedy that would often feature in one of those guilty pleasures lists. Then there were the ones you told your friends, like having a crush on someone or not answering the phone when your grandmother calls. The penultimate were those secrets that you held close to your heart. It's often knowledge that someone could use to hurt you, and somebody either knew the secret by circumstance or because you had trusted someone enough with your heart. Finally, there was a secret you told no one through fear of the consequences. These were the secrets you daren't breathe to a single soul because that knowledge wouldn't hurt you, it would be your destruction. I hid my ultimate secret behind this door. Not another living soul knew about it. Grasping the ornate silver key hanging on a long chain from around my neck, I pushed it into the lock, chanted a quick uncloaking spell, and pushed open the door. Now then, to see what's behind the door, you guys gotta go buy the book. See, that's how this works. Hook, line, and sinker. Just so you know, the next chapter is labeled I specialize in bones, not brains. Also, see, you guys don't even have to wait long for the second one. You just read this one. By the time you get done, unless you're me and it takes you 4 weeks to finish it, by the time you get done, the second one will be out and you'll be ready just to keep on rolling. All right. Now then, my next live reading will be next week. I got 2 next week. Then I think I'm done. I may have one the week of Labor Day. I can't remember. And then I'm done until November. Because Mama needs a break. Whew. It's been a long ass summer. I'm tired. I'm grumpy. And I just need to decompress for a little bit. I got a few other things I need to do. So I am taking. Is that better with these? So I'm taking a few months off. All right, everybody. Y'all have a great evening and a great weekend. And I shall see you next week. 8 o'clock on Tuesday. Be there, be square. And if you don't know what that means, you're too young to be on here to start with. You're welcome, Miss Bitch. Tell everybody thank you for letting me read it. I appreciate it. You guys are awesome. Adios. Happy reading. Stay out of them trees.